You've found AHO Radio. We're authentic human outliers coming together to help heal the fear of being authentic. To bring back genuine human conversation. No hype, no sensationalism, just honest talk about the critical issues affecting society, affecting humankind. And now, here are the hosts of AHO Radio, John Krotec and Bill Protzmann. And a very good day to you, brother. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. It's been a while. It really hasn't been a while. We talked quite a bit, Bill and myself, and it's been a while since we've had a one-on-one on the AHO. So normally we have people with us, but today we don't. So
yeah, it's time. I've been wanting to have this conversation because we're a week away from the election. So what does that make? This is the 27th or something like that. Is that true?
Yeah, like 6 days to go.
I mean, like it's and hopefully there'll be we'll have an election in something like a timely fashion. But hey, so much tension in the world, and you and I have been talking about this. Let's start with first of all, Bill Protzmann here. Glad to be with you. Thanks for listening or watching. And John Krotec out there in Florida. We're covering the coasts here, man. We've got the West Coasts covered.
Yeah, we do. I've got the whole wide world in my hands.
Yeah, it's like, ugh.
Well, yeah. I mean, tension.
Tension.
And words, and there's so many books that have been written about it, and people's programs and practices to improve. And one of them that they always say is, watch your language, be impeccable with your speech.
Yeah. Words mean things.
The words that you use, they have meanings to them. And so often we find these days is that the words get hijacked, like the word accountability,
Yep.
What that means. And we're not going to go into racism today, but there's too much of that going on. But how did these words get hijacked? And what do the definitions really mean? And Bill, we talk about this ad nauseum. And so we don't really want to have another show, just another one of those. We want to, on AHO, we wanted to have real conversations and no hype and no sensationalism, and don't cancel each other out, and don't spread more hate, and show people out there who are watching and listening that it's possible to have divergent views and still move forward with Bill, the word solutions.
Right. You see that ad from, it was like a TV ad. The two guys who are running for governor of Utah are in the same ad. And of course, they're like jibing with each other, like poking fun. But they basically say, look, whoever gets elected, we belong in this state to move it forward, to make solutions happen. And whether it's that guy or this guy, that's what we're going to do together. And it's not like a really brilliant ad. It's kind of unusual to see both candidates in the same ad. But the thing that's so cool about it is that they offer this conversation, like the one that we're having now. And you and I disagree about who we're going to vote on. But the point is that we're still Americans, right? We're still human beings. We're still doing this thing we do. And we've got to do it together. Half of us aren't going to pick up and leave the country if their guy doesn't get elected.
Although I have heard that threat,
Oh yeah, we've heard that for years, and there's all those people are still here.
They're all still here, come on. Be
if we can't get along,
just don't be,
we got to figure out how to get along. And when I was a kid, so I was growing up in the Nixon Johnson era, and who else was there? Ford. I mean, it was crazy. And my parents taught me that whoever was elected was still our president. So even though we had to fight hard and work hard for the candidate we wanted, at the end of the day, we all have to get along for another 4 years under whoever is sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So why mess that all up like before the fact?
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever remember, ever in my adulthood or even younger adulthood.
I know.
Don't ever remember an election being anything like the last 3 general elections or the last 4.
It's so fraught, and people are taking pleasure in how divisive they can be. Hey, maybe that's authentic. That's cool. If that's your authentic thing. But man, John, what do we do?
Well, we have to think about this, first of all, and not just offer lip service. I talked to a guy the other day, a marketer, a web marketer, and he
Right.
said, it's interesting, sensationalism and hype sells. It equals profits, but unfortunately, at the same time, it can also create divisions. So profits for who? And short term or long term benefits. And what we've seen in the last, this noise, we talked about the noise. I got to tell you, Bill, I'm hearing more and more quotes from people in all different positions, men and women, all the political parties, all races, kind of like the proverbial scratching their head going, I don't even know what's real anymore. I mean, have you heard that in your conversations? I hear it like every other day, it seems like.
It's hard to know what the truth is,
It's like these people behind me screaming and yelling. These are monopoly people, right? You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Monopoly, capitalism at its best, right? But we, people are screaming and hollering, and they're taking these words and they're taking their own definitions of maybe what they really mean.
Yeah.
And the search for truth becomes something nostalgic. I always thought that, and we had Josh Monsier a couple interviews ago. He's a big time philosopher guy. Haven't we been really searching for truth since the very beginning? And now somehow it seems co-opted. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I do. I'm confused, about what to believe anymore. And because of the way that I work, I feel like that tension is a creative tension. There needs to be a sort of
place to be. Yeah,
no, it's terrible. I mean, it feels crappy. Let's face it. I mean, I spent for 3 or 4 days last week just taking a deep dive into fear. What is it I'm really afraid of, and what does that feel like, and how scary can it get? And I didn't sleep, and it was, when you do that with intention because you want to find out what's there, that's a tough process, but it's survivable. And I think in the macro, thanks to COVID and everybody else, we have this opportunity for that tension to change us. And of course, you don't like it. You have to resist. It doesn't feel good, but it's the opportunity, right? So how do you survive that opportunity? Be vulnerable and authentic and let it come and just feel crappy. And maybe so, right? Maybe so.
Yeah, that transformation is difficult. A couple of things. When we were coming along, we had what, 2 or 3 news outlets, right?
Yeah.
And we could,
3 channels on TV.
Well, we could, have to go out there and move the antenna around sometimes to get good reception. But there you go, we're dating ourselves. But but nowadays, and so you could basically count on the news. At 5 o'clock, generally speaking.
Sure.
You
Cronkite, right? That's the way it was. I mean,
your daily dose of news, and you could generally trust it. Well, now you've got news 24/7, 24, 365 days a year, over 200 media outlets, and all of them have a narrative or an agenda or an opinion. And people say, well, you know what? It kind of sounds like that's how I feel. So, and it's coming from a news outlet. It's got to be true. So, so there's people that are in love with CNN. There's people that are in love with Fox. There's people that are in love with OAN, MSNBC, ABC, Bloomberg. The list, is longer than my arms and my feet. And actually this block that I live on, all those different media outlets that are spinning something for profits.
For profit, for their readers. You guys have been online, right? You see the banner at the bottom. It says, "Please support us." Even Wikipedia has their outreach going on, and free subscription for 7 days. You could be paying for subscriptions to, I don't know, all the major print media, if there's any print media left, plus a lot of the streaming media. And who's benefiting from that? Well, they are, man. They're taking your money. And whether or not it's true, they have your money.
Well, and you and me have been on the social media movie thing lately. And, and those are brilliant people that have created all these platforms, which, by the way, there's a disclaimer here. I hope not to be a hypocrite because we're using these platforms, but, it makes you wonder. And by the way, it's okay to change. One thing that you can count on, whether we're living in a digital world or the ethereal world or the spiritual world or whatever world we're living in, one thing we can count on is it's always going to change.
Yeah, change is constant.
And it's okay to change. I can remember growing up as a small boy, I love the color green, right? And I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about the color green, plants and grass, and but now, I got to admit, I kind of like blue. I think that the sky is beautiful blue. And the point is, it's okay to like different things.
Oh yeah.
As long as I don't cancel myself out the green loving side, or the green loving side bashes on the blue loving side, I think that I'm off to something good. Like unity, and this. So that then we talk about cancel, but back to news and hype and sensationalism and being a species. I wrote a poem the other day. You know how I get crazy. And think about this. Do you think that, I've always been an enthusiast for aliens?
Yeah. Yeah.
And unidentified flying objects and inner space travel and all this stuff, right? And the search for intelligent life form. Well, this poem is called "The Search for Unintelligent Life Form," right? And they just happenstance upon Earth, and they're having a heyday here with all the craziness. And I'm begging these beings to please, kind of like beam me up, Scotty, abduct me tonight, please.
Take me away, right?
I've got to go. Surround me with intellectual conversation and authenticity, and people that are less violent and less canceling. And it's kind of, I haven't got it here. I should read it maybe later, but imagine the search for unintelligent life. You think anybody's going to leave their planet?
I've been wondering about this a lot. So both you and I are from immigrant families. And I know a guy who's about to move his entire family from South Africa to Canada. And, he's, I don't know, mid-40s, something like that. What does it take to leave your homeland and move to some other place? So it's still within the Commonwealth. The British Empire still has some corners in it. So he's still moving like within a English speaking, whatever. But immigrants who came to America, who still come to America, they don't know the language. They just know that there's something better. And I think maybe that's the pull you're talking about, John, is there's something better. And if it isn't, the grass is always greener, maybe there's some of that involved too. But the risk to do that, the vulnerability to do that. I mean, if you're a refugee coming from south of the United States right now, you're sitting in the border, with no idea of what's going on. What does it take for you? I mean, there's nothing else, right? That's the only way you can go. And I don't know of any more vulnerable kind of person than the political refugee or perhaps the immigrant. You don't know if you're getting into something good or not. And maybe you've got a job and maybe there's some pull there. And, like if you're the family who's left in Europe and the father's over in New York City in the 1800s trying to make it go, and eventually he can send for one of you at a time to come and join him and put the family back together after years. I mean, we think we've got it rough. And we do.
It's a great point. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't even imagine.
It tears your heart out.
Great point. Even, no matter what color of the skin or how, but you're right. Imagine traveling across the Atlantic Ocean, which is the way my ancestors came. But
on a steamship or something, or
the 1820s. I mean, these people literally left their countries with nothing.
Nothing.
I call it, but with hearts of hope and suitcases full of dreams. And a lot of grit and determination. And
so that's real, right? That's truth.
Well, now if the power goes out and you miss the ball game, you literally pull your hair out. And so, yeah, I mean, you brought up a good point about reflection, and which brings to mind gratitude.
Sure.
And the whole spin on things these days, again, the word gratitude, people talk about the word gratitude, what does it really mean? Well, we're not seeing a lot of gratitude lately, are we?
It's a hard thing, and it's also the most powerful. I'm teaching a class on gratitude tonight, so you're like right in my lane and lighten me up on this. But yeah, it's hard because you can be grateful to have escaped something that was going to kill you, and you can be grateful to be at peace without having to escape something that's going to kill you. So all these emotions are packed in there. There's like relief, and there's anticipation, and then there's some sort of sense of relaxing, and it's dense. Like all the human emotions are in gratitude.
Well, yes, exactly. And which is awesome. I mean, I only speak from my own personal experience, but, I've done a lot of travel, South America, Central America, Europe.
Sure. Yeah.
And I know a lot of my veteran buddies have been to some really hardcore places. And I got to tell you, whether you believe it or not, trust me on this one. The rest of the world does not live the way we do here in America.
Yeah. What do you mean?
The rest of the world does not have the opportunities like we have here in America. You know, somebody somewhere wants us to believe something differently, but every time I come back from a country like Bolivia or Ecuador,
Oh, you see the contrast, right?
or Guatemala, I literally have to kiss the ground that I walk on, because we have so much here at home, so much wealth and abundance, and certainly we can always improve. We get that with the environment and with each other and all of this. But if you were to really sit down in all of your squalor or all of your grandeur and think about what's really important in life, you might have a whole different thought process when it comes to America. America, with all of its ills, and there's a lot of them, but I can tell you, they're not in comparison to some of the ills in most of the countries of the world. There's no utopia, no matter where you go. But I can assure you, I thank my ancestors who had the balls to leave, to come here, to at least give my ancestors and relatives a fighting chance.
Yeah, that makes a good point. You know, there is no other place where you have that kind of, where you can experience that kind of freedom and take advantage of that kind of opportunity.
Bill, nowhere.
You know,
nowhere, man.
We have this issue right now of of having been the world's leader in opportunity, and we still are, but we've also been shooting ourselves in the foot by sort of, well, I'll say it, by pissing backwards on our allies. And there may be some level set that's required there, but how do we do that with compassion? I mean, this is the curious thing. So obviously, we want to have some form of equality. We talk about racial equality, income equality, all that kind of stuff. We want to have that. There's some sort of a need for balance. But how do we encourage the rest of the world to come into this place? I mean, I have friends who have dual citizenship. They're moving to Denmark because there's a whole bunch of reasons that they want to go back home, right? And I was thinking of them as you're talking about the immigration thing. So here's a family that emigrated to America and now wants to go back. And the thing that they said about it was that they have bigger opportunities in Denmark, in Denmark, than they do in America. And so I know opportunity is what you make of it, right?
Well, maybe they do. You know, it depends on what their skill sets are. There's so many. You know, it's different for every individual.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So there are obviously people that move out of America, but I would say on face, there's probably more people around the world that would want to come here than leave here.
They'd want to make a new home here.
You know, so then that, you know, I've known people that have moved back, you know, but here's, you know, you asked the question about partnerships. In strategic partnerships. Okay. Strategic partnerships are not about territorialism.
Yeah, not anymore.
Or let's say one-sided communication.
Oh yeah, not anymore.
Or they're not about personal agenda.
It's got to be a two-way street and some vulnerability and accountability involved, right?
Well, it's yes. I mean, it's about two-way communication,
right?
And I'd rather say conversation.
Conversation where you listen, you actually appreciate. You know, here I am interrupting you, but I actually appreciate what you're saying before.
No. It's about finding real collaboration.
Yeah.
It's about creating solutions, but probably more importantly, and I'm telling the reason why, you know, I'm going off of your question and discussing it is that in the last 4.5 years of rebuilding my own life in the modern business world, a lot of these things that I just described, you don't find. And probably the most important outcome that everybody in a strategic partnership should shoot for or aspire for is mutual success.
There you go.
If I go into a partnership with you, Bill, and this is all about me, and what can I get off of Bill? How can I make this relationship somehow work for me more than it works for Bill? Then that's not a very sustainable partnership.
Yeah, it's tilted, right? It's
I won't name any companies, but anybody that happens to, but if you're listening, there are companies that I have worked with in this digital world who were so far away from real strategic business organizational partnership than you could ever imagine.
Oh yeah, free country. We can do what we want, right?
And no accountability.
No, I'm free to take advantage of you, and you're free to let me.
I'm telling you straight up, they took money from me. They had a different agenda. They used me for network. And I'm not crying victim here. I'm just saying any business, you know, if you're a leader in business, this is something you have to look out for.
Be aware, right?
Or be aware. I'm not going to say that I'm a saint at all, but I can tell you this. Any relationship that I go into, I like to keep it on an even playing field.
Yes, please.
You know, and let's, especially if it's a business relationship, don't, you know, so many companies these days, Bill, we've talked about this. They want money up front before anything's ever done.
Oh yeah, like attorneys.
And the reason is maybe because work gets done and people don't pay. Now that's another story. But how, you know, what are you going to do for me, and how can we mutually benefit each other? I can't tell you the couple of companies that have taken thousands of dollars from me that never executed what we had talked about.
It's crazy, man, and it happens.
And when I tried to find some accountability, and think about this, if you have a paying client and the paying client wants some accountability, they have that right.
Yep.
Both of these people, these companies, when I asked for accountability, one of them unilaterally quit doing business with me, and the other one accused me of harassment. I'm thinking, so then you get into the smoke and mirrors, you know, pointing the finger means there's like what, 3 coming back at you.
Yeah, who needs that when you've got things to do, right?
No wonder nothing gets done in business, or why it's so scary. And so what that does is it makes it tougher for the next partner that you're looking for, because you're warier.
Oh,
You go in not trusting, and without trust or always being on guard, it's got to be scary to be a gazelle. I mean, I got to tell you, you know, always looking to who's going to eat me next. You know, we got to stop that. We got to lead the way with integral core values and accountability and authenticity. And you mentioned the word vulnerability. You know, you still got to put yourself out there, but we can do better. Come on, man, we can do better.
Oh, totally.
I didn't mean to say that. Somebody.
No. It's totally true. I mean, look at the digital world that we all operate in. That's not a place where there is any authenticity. It's digital, right? It's not human. You have to be human to be authentic. You can't be human and be digital at the same time. That's an avatar. It's programmed by something else. It's not you. So we have this built-in, you know, divide that's right there. And then we have all of the noise that's trying to get us to migrate into that digital world and inhabit it in a way that we fundamentally can't. We can't be vulnerable digitally. We can't be authentic digitally. It's a representation of authenticity, but it isn't authentic. It isn't genuine. It isn't the real thing. And so, like you were talking about, I think before we got started, all these words that mean something to human beings have been co-opted to try to mean something digitally, where they mean bupkis. There's, you know, you can write a pretty deep thing, you can post it, but that's still your humanness, you know? And as someone who's been writing a bunch of stuff like that, I can tell you that there's not a lot of interest in the humanness of us out there in the digital world. Why? Because it doesn't sell. You know,
that's a great point. You know, it's like, what's the flavor of the day, and how can we digitize it and monetize it?
Yeah, how can we manipulate the human beings by making it, you know, shiny, attractive? And you know, there are real professionals in that space, and they do a great job. And I won't name any names, but at least 2 of them are running for election.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and Yeah, I mean, I'm reading a book now by Jerome Lanier, who's one of the guys that helped
Social
to create.
dilemma guy, right?
Yeah, one of the guys there. He's written lots of books. I think the guy's pretty darn brilliant, but this one's called
Oh yeah,
Who
who
Owns,
owns the future?
Who Owns the Future. This is one of many books that he's written. This guy is he's probably one of the top 20 or so smartest human beings on the planet, right? And he was one of the guys that helped to create virtual reality. The
Yeah.
same things that you're talking about, uh, and so even these guys that have developed these things are kind of saying very similar things. That this genie is somehow out of the bottle, and it has become less so about humanity and relationships and authenticity, and more about what I just said, digitized monetization of the avatar that looks human. And then there you go. So what you just said, Bill, which is so freaking relevant, these words that go co-opted, and then gratitude means nothing. Responsibility means nothing.
Yeah, it's checking a box. It has nothing to do with,
Oh, and the word
authenticity.
ghosting. Oh, ghosting. Okay, so Bill sends me a nice email, and I said I'll get back to you on that, and I never do. I'll probably miss some emails, so I got to be careful with that disclaimer. But ghosting is like that. It is like the poster child for irresponsibility.
And it's become okay, right? Because like
Or lack
everybody
of
does it.
integrity. Yeah, everybody does it.
It's
It's
like,
got to be good, And there's a quote that I had somewhere, and it's kind of gross, actually. Everybody's got opinions. Some people might, put that in parentheses, say narratives, and then I would say some are more smellier than others.
yeah.
And so when you hear an opinion or a narrative, check your data banks, check your own core values, and see if it resonates, and use a little bit of human intuition. If something doesn't really feel right, like the gut feeling, that cat behind you there, what's your
Yeah, there
cat's
we
name?
go. That's Dee Dee.
That cat has more intuition
Oh, true.
than the average human being. I mean,
Yeah.
if something doesn't feel right, you get that gut feeling, or it's too good to be true, chances are it's true.
Yeah.
And yeah, free this, sign up here. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing is free. But guess what? You're becoming just another number or another gadget that somebody somewhere in some control room, and this is not conspiracy theory, this is what's going on.
That's what's happening, man.
Millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars are being spent to create revenue streams, mountains of revenues, unlike anything ever seen before in the history of world business. And there's a group of people on this planet right now that are getting so astronomically wealthy. Well, the middle classes around the world wither away, and the poverty-stricken people get even more poverty-stricken. Something's not right, man.
Yeah. And how do you lead out of that? Like if you're Bezos or you're Zuckerberg, how do you lead in a way that's meaningful when your view is so much different than the average view, right? It's really hard. And, having a vision for one thing and trying to implement that in a giant software social media network or a giant software search engine doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right thing for human beings or the authentic thing for human beings. I mean, look at Google. I mean, amazing search engine. Turns out Google is doing everything it can to increase its profits, right? I would do that if it were my company. However, there's a social responsibility component to that. At what point do you start to limit or throttle the kinds of negative information that people want to consume? And Google's been co-opted by the promoters of negative information. What if a similar kind of positive, I mean, this is impossible, but what if a similar kind of positive information campaign were to get started to bust the algorithm open? Like you were talking about the other day, crazy searches, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, we were talking about that the other day, Bill, and I was saying, what happens if we put a call out to 100 million people globally? We said, listen,
on Tuesday at 8 o'clock, you're going to search for,
Yeah, well, or think of one of the most bizarre, crazy searches that you could ever do that makes absolutely no sense. Like, I'm a 10-year-old boy and I just graduated from college, and I need a screwdriver to fix my dog because he broke his birdhouse.
Right, exactly.
Where do I go? And let's say 100 million people did that globally on Google. They just came up with some random, ridiculously crazy search
for like a week each.
for like a week each. I mean, you would literally break the algorithm
Yeah, you would.
Unless of course they found out what was going on and they shut you off. But imagine, and then it would make that data that they've been making millions of dollars off of, it would make it useless.
Oh yeah.
And then Google would not have the, they would not have the reputation as everything you read on Google this, Google that. Not everything you read on Google is true.
And a lot of it is, paid stuff before you get down to the organic results.
Yeah, and which is usually like on a page 100.
Yeah.
But so let's get real here, ladies and gentlemen. And those leaders that are in those positions, you mentioned 2 of them, but there's a lot more.
Oh yeah.
How can we make it better?
Well, it isn't a leadership thing. I mean, I talked about Zuckerberg. So it is at that level, but all of those platforms respond to us. They respond to you and me and the millions of other people that are using them. So in one sense, they reflect what it is that our majority opinion is, right? Like we're pretty much into fear over here in America right now these days. We got fear of everything, right? We got hatred of everything too. Fear and hate sell. And until we, the people, decide that fear and hate are no longer where we're going, then we're going to have digital algorithms that support our fear and hate. Those are going to be the top search terms, and therefore they're going to be the most lucrative search terms. And we've done that, guys. Hey, it's us. We did that.
We talk about, free will is the ultimate freedom, bar none. I mean, I think that's probably something that most people can agree with.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But your free will is also what you just said it's been co-opted somehow, and we the people, when we the people wherever globally decide that we're not going to take it anymore. Remember the movie Tommy?
Oh yeah. Good analogy.
What was that song? We're not going to take it. Remember? I mean, and then they're like, it's really cool. It's kind of against I'm not saying go completely against the establishment. We need each other. But, when we decide that we want to empower ourselves and we know that we can do that, until we reach that point, we're going to continue to be co-opted, continue to be monetized without us even knowing it, continue to be manipulated. What's the next toy to come out that everybody's got to have, down this primrose path that's not sustainable. And I would implore, I would suggest that we seek to connect with like-minded individuals who truly in their hearts want to do the right thing. Because I really believe this, Bill, and I might be some naive 61-year-old guy, but I truly believe that most people, when given a particular situation, will more often than not do the right thing. You're always going to have, 1 or 2 out of 100 that are nefarious, right? And they're always ruining it for the rest of us. But I remember my dad coming along and he said, if you take the population, on the right side, you have 1%. I'm throwing these out there, but it's a small number of people.
Yeah, like outlier, small.
Yeah, on the left side, you've got like 1%.
Also outlier, small, right? Tiny.
Right, tiny. And the 98% of us, like I don't really like to dress up in suits. I'm more casual and liberal in what I like to wear. But it doesn't mean that I'm not. I can do that. So what I'm saying is that all of us, every single human being, is more conservative on some things and more liberal on some things. And the 98% of us, more people than the ones on the fringes, 98% of us want to just survive.
Just get along, to live life,
raise our families, make a living, make a decent living, have enough money to maybe, have maybe a toy or 2, or sometimes just the basics. But it's tough to do that because you got the 2% on each end that are screaming and yelling at each other and creating this animosity and this division with the 98% of us. And then you've got somebody manipulating the metrics. It is the perfect storm for a cesspool of humanity.
Well, is it real? I mean, are the people on the fringes that loud? Can they control that much of the algorithm to make it seem real for all the 98%? I've been
I
wondering
think,
about this, right?
well, I don't think it's real. I think it's manipulated. I think it's constructed,
Okay, there you
but
go. Yeah.
but it's happening. You know, you can't,
Yeah.
you know, do an experiment, you know, go home or wherever you are, turn on your news that you watch and tell me if you're not pissed off within 5 minutes, and then change the channel and go to another one and tell me if you're not pissed off in 5 minutes. You know, you could go to 4 or 5 of them. And if you're happy and dancing around and loving life and feeling really good after 5 minutes, then I would like to watch what news stations you're
Well,
watching.
seriously, yes. Dial me in on that.
You know, tell me, you know, text me, you know, send it to Bill or me. But I would venture to say, Bill, we've talked that after 5 minutes of any news outlet, they're going to run a story that's going to make you agitated. It's going to make you angry. You're going to get resentful. You're going
Yeah,
to
that's
wonder
the algorithm, man. That's what sells, right?
you're going to wonder what's real anymore. And then the word authenticity just gets thrown in the toilet or in the cesspool with the other words. You know,
Yeah.
I'm saying let's create a septic tank and let's clean it out. You know, let's
Yeah, just dump everything in there and flush it.
probably a bad analogy, but you know, we're always coming up with something. But you know, come on, we can do better. We can do better. We have everything we need right here, or here, or better yet, right here.
Here. Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Love and hate. You know, if we took the time to listen, man, I have got to read you this poem that I wrote called "Enough is Enough."
Bring it.
You got to, I just, you know, and there's to keep in mind, I'm not pushing religion. I'm
No,
only
it's not.
saying,
It's not about any kind of mindset.
yeah, yeah.
You know?
This is about something deep. Okay, let me see if I can find this real quick. It's called it's called when is enough enough?
Ah,
Okay, here you go. Oh, here it is. Okay. Enough is enough. And then in parentheses, seriously, when? Okay. If we tasted, chewed just enough, despite the sugary sensations, heavenly bounty would fill us up. If we listened hard enough, despite the constant noise, divinity's bells are pealing. If we looked hard enough, despite the smoke and the mirrors, God's creatures do survive. If we stopped, slowed down long enough, despite the chaos all around us, spirit would fill our vessels. If we touched another's heart long enough, despite its breaking, love would fix the cracks. If we took the time to think, if we only knew it, believed it to be so, enough is enough. We'd know, we'd understand how truly blessed all of us really are. You know, so
oh, that's so simple and direct.
slow
Right?
down,
Yeah.
go inward, take a deep breath.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one because we're so skillful. I mean, people, we really are. Look what we've done with the world and look at the opportunities that exist, whether you call those opportunities climate change or electing your guy or whatever the opportunities are for you, starting a business, making your business grow. Um, it's just so simple to come inside and trust what you have in there, right?
When you play the piano, how do you feel?
Well, that's just it, you know? It is. How do you feel? It isn't about this. It isn't about thinking my way through a piece of music. It's just about being in the moment of it and expressing it with presence and authenticity, right? And genuine. And you cannot create a piece of art or a piece of music if you're just all stuck in your head. You've got to open up to the feelings that come there. And so, yes, that's exactly it. How do you feel? You feel the music, right? You feel the music.
You feel the music, you know, absolutely, Bill. And you know, I got to say this, you know, if you're out there, if you're spreading the joy, the gratitude, the love, the music, then it's a good thing. I mean, you are really doing what you can to help not only yourself but humanity.
Oh
right?
yeah.
But I got to tell you, I got an email the other day from an organization and from a person that I had that I hold in high esteem. I probably still do, but it was a letter about, it was an email about getting out there and voting.
Oh yeah. You've told me about this. We won't mention names, but
No,
but
but it was a slant.
I read you, man, because you thought that this individual was above the fray, right?
Was higher consciousness and all of
Right.
that. They espoused that.
Yep.
But what I got was a lower consciousness, lower
Right.
vibrational email
Right.
that did one thing. It instilled fear and anger.
Yeah.
So my gauntlet that I'm throwing down, if you're in these positions of influence, the word influencer, who's an influencer, and you're adding to what Bill just said to the fray, if you're creating more animosity, more cancel culture, more anger, more resentment, more hatred, then you're not using your position very wisely.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Not passing judgment. I'm just saying.
No, but you're right. Right. If your thing is about, if you have power and you misuse that power, that creates distrust.
If the shoe fits, yeah.
You know, and
that took me off guard, brother. I got to tell you that, and you know who it took me off guard. I'm like, holy cow. We're in an organization that's all about self-improvement and making our lives better and raising it to a higher consciousness. But I'm going to send out an email that
goes the other
invokes
way.
fear.
Right. So so here's the thing. So how do you have compassion in that situation? Like you personally, how do you have, I fight this all the time. How do I have compassion for Trump? Right. It's a good question, and there's a good exercise in that. So what did you do?
Well, you know what? I first of all, I thought, well, he's done a lot of good in the world despite this email, and then I chalk it up to another person, unfortunately, who's been co-opted by their own fear and trying to just spread it around, and that's kind of what happens. I mean, what's the old? I found when I was going through my divorce. Thank God I saved my marriage, but I found that when I was going through my divorce and I was just miserable. It was amazing the people that were hanging out with me and that were, you got to stick it to her.
Right. There was this angry energies that was trying to.
Yeah, I mean, I was talk about law of attraction. I was attracting these angry, divisive people who maybe were miserable themselves, and there was 1-2 people that hung with me through that. Thank God my wife stuck with me, but if you're angry and fearful, and what it showed me was that he's fearful, and for whatever reason, we're humans, we get fearful. If it's a grizzly running after you, by all means run.
But doesn't the fact that this guy has revealed his humanity in this way that set you off, right? But he revealed his humanity in his fear. Doesn't that connect you? Because as a human being, we all fear. Fear is a part of who we are, right?
In a way, yes, but because of the negative influence that might have on a tonnage of people, like a huge population.
Sure.
There's a thing in the military we call force multiplier. It's usually used by special operators, special forces guys. They go into an indigenous population, and teams of these guys train thousands of fighters, and the theory behind it is, a few people can train an army, right?
Right.
With fewer casualties to the people training them, right? And it's very effective. It's the same thing with this. You can affect a lot of people in a good, positive way, or you can affect a lot of people in a negative way. And I would say that, yeah, there's that connection, humanity, one-on-one, mano-a-mano. But when it's in mass like that, wasn't it you were talking about the thing with the butterfly wings that are flapping around?
Oh yeah, spooky action at distance, or what they call in quantum mechanics. No, shoot, now I've forgotten what it is. But yeah, the idea is that everything is connected, right? So if you make a drop in the ocean over here, it ripples over and millions of miles away.
Yeah, and so you have to, before you do stuff like that, you really have to. You have to think deep about what it is you're trying to accomplish. If it's a personal agenda and that's your personal beliefs, I personally wouldn't send out an email like that.
Not to an
I
entire
would,
tribe. I mean,
no, I would probably, I mean, look at these monkeys. You got some monkeys that are like screaming and scared. You got other monkeys that are wondering what's really going on. And, you're in a position, you're in a position to influence, do you want to influence humanity positively, or do you want to just add to what you just said earlier, the fray? I would just say, hey, can we talk about this?
well, sure. Yeah. The conversation is missing, right?
Because I'm
You get this
seeing one
blast and your mind gets like tweaked, but you have no opportunity to write back or even pick up the phone, right? You can't talk to somebody who has millions of followers, right?
Well, I questioned the email. I did write back. And interestingly enough, the very next day, the question they asked me, did I want to unsubscribe? They didn't, they didn't even address what my issue was,
right.
which means, and somebody had to have read that somewhere. So here you have a company on one side that is like this guy on this shoulder, and then you got doing this, but you have a guy that represents a company that has a really strong following, but then he sends out an email that tarnishes that image just a bit.
Well, maybe the image was misperceived, not by you. I'm just saying it's real. I mean, so let's see. There's a big controversy right now with J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling has come out with very unkind things to say about trans people. And she's not backing down and she's not commenting or anything else, but that sort of tweaked a bunch of her followers. And,
Well,
and what do you do? Like as a follower, do you stop buying the books? The same thing happened with, every so often there's a movie star that has some issue that comes up. I think of Bill Cosby, I loved his shows, but now he's a pedophile. So it's like, oh my God, or whatever it is he is. He got locked up for something. And forgive me, Bill, if you're listening, small chance of that. If I got the charges wrong, but it was some sexual thing, sexual inappropriateness. And what does that do to your image of the guy, right? Well, the image is the image that they've been projecting. It may not be themselves, may not be who they really are. And I have to think about like Trump this way. There's something inside that guy who's probably good and American. And, and even though it looks crazy on the outside, somewhere inside there's probably a human being. And I think that's probably true for the email that you got to. You had this idea and it wasn't exactly true because in there was a human being who's also vulnerable and scared and does crazy things and says stuff that they probably shouldn't, right?
Well, in any narrative, what I always look for, in my own healing journey, what I learned was that labels are counterproductive.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and then people will say that you have to have a label because, okay, whatever the argument is. But when you're labeling somebody, it's usually not a good positive thing. And what happened in this email was that he labeled two groups of people that was counterproductive. So a lot of times if I see labeling right away, then I realize it's a personal judgment. And,
yeah. I see what you mean.
And a personal judgment isn't necessarily my truth.
Yeah.
However, when you're in a position of leadership or in a position of CEOship or, some type of position where you espouse a certain value set for your company, but yet your emails is diametrically opposed to that, you run a risk of people not having any faith in you.
Sure, because you look two-sided.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and without even say, you do it. We are our own worst enemies. We do it to ourselves. And there's a book somewhere, I haven't read it, but somebody tells me it's called The 4 Directions.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be. There might be 6 directions now, but that's supposed to be a really good book. And one of them is be impeccable with your speech.
Oh, you're the 4 agreements.
4 agreements. Yeah. And do you have that book?
Oh yeah. It's been what is it?
Look that up real quick, Bill.
Ruiz or something. I haven't got it in front of me, but I'll put it in the show notes. But 4 agreements is fundamental.
One of them is being impeccable with,
Yep.
Well, be impeccable with your speech. And that doesn't necessarily mean in diction or how you vocalize things. It also means how you write things and how you come across with people, if it has anything to do with language. And so I would just have to say, and I've been guilty. You ever send out an email that you go,
oops, right?
Whoa, I shouldn't have said it that way. Or if they're going to take it the wrong way, or even a text. All I'm saying is, this person, you espouse higher consciousness. Just think. if we're conscious about everything that we do, your cat thinks, these chimpanzees think, we're humans and we're supposed to be more evolved. So wouldn't you think that we would think more about what it is that we do, not only to each other, but to ourselves, So if you want to maintain a high profile, just think about what you're sending out there, because there's people that are watching you.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that I wrote a poem one time, I don't claim sainthood, but I'm not entirely in the devilship community too. I'm somewhere in between. So I'm not placing blame or trying to lay guilt or placing a label or passing judgment. I'm just saying, think. Whatever that means to you, let's all think about what we do.
Yeah, words are powerful. And I've got way too many of them sitting out there, and in the historical record now to take any of them back. But if you read my words over a long period of time, you'll see the evolution and how things are changing. And perhaps we'll have a bot someday that's able to do that, so that there's a social profile component to each one of us and says, well, Bill used to be, I'll just use politics. Bill used to be a Republican, and he grew up in a family that, voted for Nixon, all that. And then over the course of these you can watch him write and see how he went from the kid who wrote the anti-lottery letter to the editor, in 11th grade, to being someone who is now more interested in whether universal health care makes sense, right? You can see the transition, and that's, it's public, you got to own that stuff.
You do. Well, I have done things and hung out with individuals that all I can say is that I've been very, the universe has been good to me, that it got me through those times, because
it's been compassionate, dude. I wouldn't be here.
I was probably one of the most rebellious people,
seriously, yeah,
ever. I mean, I could have been very easily one of these guys that ended up in one of these maximum security prisons or some state institution. He's completely lost his marbles. And you said something, Bill, that's really important for people to remember about that. Life and the journey that every single human being is on is a process. It is it's a journey. It's a learning experience. And people would argue that we've been here before. Maybe there is a life force with elements of the past, but every day is a new beginning, and every day, we can get up and we can improve. And I got to tell you, we're hardwired for some of the worst parts of our personality, and it's the way that the culture, the society that we've been brought up in, it does that to us. And come on, every single being has done something that is okay by cultural or societal standards, but they know it's wrong.
Yeah.
So what I implore people to do, or suggest people do, is to take a moment to seriously look at the person in the mirror and say to that person, or ask that person, who are you? And if you've got a vision or a dream or a hope, ask that person what it is. Talk to yourself personally. I probably look like one of these guys when I look in the mirror, but it all starts with the self.
You're absolutely right. You got to love yourself. Yeah. And that includes being compassionate for the parts of you that are not so great. I mean, what about that guy that wrote that email? Do you think he's looking in the mirror right now going, wow, maybe I shouldn't have said that because I offended somebody that I love?
I'm sure he offended a lot of people. And I don't think that was his intent. I think that, one thing that we know about, and you just said about the 4 agreements, when you're very passionate about things, it's hard to sometimes to stop ourselves in that mindset. More of a reactionary mindset. The proactive mindset sometimes takes a little bit to bring under control. But one thing that I've done on my phone is I've got these things by Robin Rice, the 60-second meditations.
Yeah.
And anytime I'm feeling out of sorts or something agitated me or whatever, I'll leave the area or find a nice, comfortable, quiet spot, maybe in my car or at home somewhere, or walk outdoors or leave a meeting. and I'll plug in one of Robin Rice's 1 minute meditations, and I'll just listen.
Yeah.
And physiologically, scientifically, spiritually, they work.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And when I was going through the worst time of my life, potential divorce, losing everything I had worked hard for, and I got to tell you, I was listening 40, 50, 60 times a day. And over a period of time, it got down less and less and less. And now, I do a morning and an afternoon meditation. I highly, recommend it. But the 1 minute meditations, I don't use them nearly as much. But, check those out. I can tell you that's one methodology that you can do out there in a chaotic world to slow things down a bit and to center yourself on your true being.
Seriously, do you want to be a part of the noise, or do you want to be a part of the music?
Anger and violence, we see so much of it, every day. And, we read about it, we visualize it. Some of those living in these cities might even experience it firsthand or in a combat zone or whatever. Violence and mayhem is no way for a civilized society to operate with each other. In fact, it's extremely uncivilized. And even though these monkeys behind me, these chimpanzees, are wild animals, I mean wild, but look how they're just sitting here so calmly. Look at the hands, they're sitting so calmly, and they get along, and we can learn a lot from animals, which means we can learn a lot from each other. And as long as you're constantly open-minded to be able to offer those with opposite or opposing views a certain amount of respect or dignity, or just lend them your ear, or what Bill just said, compassion, then you're well on the road to adding something of the high value to our society. And,
Yep.
and, there's sometimes, like I was joking about the aliens coming to abduct me, but if we could all just act like these chimpanzees, I think that we could find a better way to become more successful in our lives, but more successful as a society.
I'm
more
thinking
authentic,
of that.
authentic,
I can't remember the song it's from, but Michael Franti has a song where he says, "When hard times come, the teacher's in the room." And that's been really hard for me to accept. I like to fix stuff that's broken. I'm a digital plumber, right? That's what I do. But when it gets hard, instead of trying to fix the hard, why don't I just stop, Bill, and let the hard work on me a little bit, and see what it is that's needs to be uncovered. And actually, instead of going external with it, go internal, like you're doing with the meditations. Just take it inside and say, okay, intervene, dial down the upregulate, downregulate a little bit, and then take an inward focus and say, so what is it what is this teacher that's in the room for me right now? What can I learn from it? And the email that you got is an example of that, and gaslighting and ghosting are examples of that, and the social media noise and all the people who are out there not doing business ethically and just whatever it is, it's all part of our instruction. And being able to accept that, man, that's hard, but it also works.
It's
up,
absolutely great points, Bill. And, it boils down to love versus hate. And
Yep, absolutely.
I remember a really good friend of mine said that love always wins. And and it did. I saved this marriage and this thing I was going through. But, so ask yourself, and it's very simple. If you love yourself and respect yourself, you will love and respect others. And, so I think that the answers to that conundrum of society is pretty evident. We know who the lovers are, and we know who the haters are. And quite honestly, hate is not going to bring about balance in your life.
No.
Like these,
or joy or simplicity or any of the stuff you want, things. Right? Any of the good stuff doesn't go with hate. Sorry, people, that won't work.
No, it won't work. So, anyhow, that's for another conversation. All these band-aids that we put on things to hide the real issue. And so all I can say is thank you for listening, and the people who are still following us on AHO Radio. And if you're interested in maybe having a conversation with us, if you have a message that you'd like to give to the world and you're in a place to influence people, we'd like to help you with that messaging. And so, contact Bill, and he's great at what he's been doing, and I couldn't do any of these conversations without him. And so thank you, Bill, for being over there in California. I know you guys have had it rough this year. Well, we've kind of had it rough too, but
Yeah.
there's another hurricane churning out there. But thank you for being Bill Protzmann, and thank you, listeners, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, that have braved this past 60 minutes to listen to us talk about things that we think are relevant. Thank you for listening again.
John, it's a tough act to follow, but I love you, brother, and I'm so grateful that we're doing this together. It moves me forward in a way that is really helpful, and I know the same is true for you and for our audience. We hope that it's doing the same thing and creating some space to be authentic, to be real, to be vulnerable, and to see what happens there. You know, it's scary, but it isn't quite as scary as the fear that's being created by the mass media. You know, it's more of a personal. And when it gets personal like that, then you can really make progress. You really do things, you really change things, you know, in that place. And so thank you for that, John. I mean, it's really been, it's been amazing. You know, I've been doing this for about a year now, something like that. And, you know, let's just
John,
keep on keeping on.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And appreciate that. And you're welcome. And thank you for listening, everybody out there.
Absolutely. Couldn't do this without you, audience. Hey, and thanks to our sponsors, Green Zone Hero, Music Care. Great businesses. Check them out online. You've got the URLs because you know the names. And hey, we'll see you next week. Everybody vote. If you haven't yet, vote. Thank you for joining us on this episode of AHO Radio. Information we mentioned is probably in the show notes, but if we missed anything, please let us know and we'll get it added for you. Subscribe to the AHO Radio channel on YouTube to stay connected. And as always, we wish you health, success, and significance. AHO. AHO.
AHO.